We're going to go through the Judge Advisor discussion here. That I put together some deck materials. Invite questions as we go through this. Also, love to hear some of your experiences if you see things maybe a slightly different. And I apologize if some of this might be a little basic in some elements, just because I wasn't aware of what the experience level was going to be in the room. So that'll be good. So unearthed. So the thing this year is about archaeology, and we'll get into that a little bit, not too much. Mostly it's going to be about the what happens in the judging room, what happens with being a judge advisor. So purpose of today's discussion, one, introduce you to me, because I don't think, other than Jackie, I'm not sure that I've really met anybody else. Gene, of course. Um, so introduce you to me, and I was the judge advisor last year at state, and would like, if you've got any questions as the season goes on or coming into your tournaments or anything like that, put a face to a name, feel comfortable emailing because you've seen me, you know me, that kind of thing. So we'll get through some questions and things like that throughout the season. Another thing is to try and get as consistent as possible between all judging lanes in a tournament, all qualifiers in the season, and between qualifiers and state. As we all know, judging is a very personal thing, and it is sometimes a little difficult, and it frustrates teams. We all know this, but it frustrates teams around the world when they go to one competition and they get scored a certain way. They go advance to the next competition, and the scores usually, if they don't change things, oftentimes might come down a little bit, and it frustrates the team. So we'll talk a little bit about that here today too, and that's kind of one of the things, is how do we get as consistent as possible between everything through here. And it won't be perfect, but we'll try to do our best. Share with the resources available to you, and then also evaluate what help looks like through the season. So innovation prompt is identify a problem faced by archaeologists and propose a solution that can help. Reality is, from a first perspective, all topics, all research projects are okay. If somebody wants to do the removal of space junk as a project, according to first, that's okay. There's nothing in the rubric that says archaeology. There's nothing in the rubric that says that specific. Not 100% certain why first has decided to do this, other than the fact that sometimes their interest levels in a team and they want to go do certain things. And the important part from a first standpoint is just doing the research, getting and talking to people and putting in that energy, as long as it's not a repeat or an extension of last year's. So if a team has done space junk for 4 years in a row, that's not quite the same. But I don't expect that anybody's going to do that. I think there's going to be a lot of people that'll be looking at the archaeology. I think there may be some people that will also maybe look, rather than at human archaeology, maybe looking at more bones and dinosaurs and stuff like that. So there may be somewhat of a mixture there, and that's okay. Just so you guys know, not to penalize, not to disqualify any teams that maybe do something that's slightly off of this, but this is the prompt for this year. So we'll start with the very basics of what are the accommodations. You guys have all done this, so I'm going to kind of skim through this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But there are some times when you get into a new event center or a new event thing. So this is what is typical, is that, an interview room. Typically, you have two larger tables, one for the judges, one for the teams. Typically, you have a couple, 2 to 3 chairs for judges. It all depends on whether you have 2 judges in the room or 3 judges. Or maybe you've got a whole bunch of judges and you can have up to 4, but every judge gets a chair kind of thing and sit at that table. Not sure if you guys all do this, but it is okay for coaches to come into the room. The thing that the first says, and I kind of second it, is setting up the chairs behind the teams. So, and the purposes of that is that coaches can attend, but not prompt. So you want the kids to be doing the work, you want the kids to be talking, you want the kids to be answering questions and not looking to the coach for who should answer this, who should say this, who should whatever. And so by placing the coaches behind, it's more likely that the kids will be the ones in charge of their event, and the judges will have a better opportunity to judge what is it that the kids have done and what do the kids know, without the added input um, from a coach. So can they record with a phone? Um, I haven't seen where they can't. I prefer if they don't. And the reason why is because then you've got two teams from the same school and the judges give to, how the feedback is given and things like that. Prefer not, but to my knowledge, there is nothing that prevents videotaping with the phone. It would be from behind, so it would look a little awkward, but that's a choice there. Um, the only thing that I've come up with that, or I've seen through first, where a judge or a coach may be more out front, is if they're needed for interpretation. So if there's a deaf student on the team and somebody needs to do sign language for that student, ASL, American Sign Language, or if there is someone who foreign language or something like that, that you need to have that might be, I don't know how prevalent that is within the state of Kentucky, but I do know that it happens occasionally throughout the United States and other countries as well, where you'll have particularly at the World Festival, where you'll have people with different language needs, and that might then require a coach or somebody to help with that interpretation. But the one thing to note for teams is that if you do have to go through and do that, we will not be adding time for the judging. The judging time still fits there. Any other questions on that one? Awesome. You guys probably do that. What does the deliberation room look like? Basically, the way I like to set my deliberation rooms up is a series of tables and chairs arranged such that the judges can all see each other and see the judge advisor, which oftentimes becomes a bit of a horseshoe kind of look there. So the judge advisor is kind of the coordinator. I like to think of it as almost like the project management of the judges in the judging room. The judge advisor doesn't make the decisions. They just ensure the conversation happens and kind of, starts the conversation, stops the conversation when you're kind of everybody's just repeating each other and things like that, much like a project manager might do in a large team meeting. I spent the last 15 years of my career at Procter & Gamble as a project manager, so that's the kind of stuff that I used to do all the time. The judge advisor oftentimes needs a bit of a longer table or one or two tables to manage. There's paper here and paper there and different stuff and things like that. So that's what I usually like to do. So I've got my space for the judges. I've got my space for the judge advisor to go ahead and put things, manage what's coming in and what's happening there. I typically I'll have a computer tied to a projection device that all judges can see. And we'll go through a little bit later what might be on there. You guys have seen FL Tournament. There's also, if you've seen the OJS system too, that for the judging, um, managing and discussion. If there are any in that room, windows into the hallway or other gathering spaces, usually outside is not a problem unless there's a big area outside that everybody gathers, which basically you should cover up those windows in those situations such that teams walking by can't peek in and see what's going on. And it kind of correlated to that is nobody except judges. If you have a judge assistant, that judge assistant or tournament directors should be allowed in to ensure full freedom of deliberation. Another exception there might be the head ref. I often will, between rounds 2 and rounds 3, try to get the head ref to come in and kind of give a little synopsis of what might be going on at the tables, and to tell the judges, hey, here's teams that are doing great with the greatest professionalism. Here's some teams that are kind of maybe struggling a little bit, or give any other kind of insights of what's happening out at the table that might be of interest to us. But I usually work with that head judge, or head ref, sorry, to do that and come into the room between there as the teams or the judges are deliberating. Any questions or thoughts? Or pit admin's observations are valuable as well. Correct. Yes. And I've had those come in too. Thank you, Gene.
So you're saying like after, sorry, I probably should put my video on.
Oh,
Af
that's fine.
so after all they've judged everybody, everybody comes back to the room. Like they haven't put anything in the computer before they get to the room. You're putting it in?
It depends on the competition, right? So the way if you've got a judge assistant, or the way I've done it in past is between judging sessions. So I've always had the luxury of having my judges in a room, and usually 4 or 5 that teams that they will talk to throughout the day, right? The morning. And
Mhm.
so after there's usually about a 10 to 15 minute spacing between teams that come in. I will go and walk around to the judging rooms, pick up any sheets that they filled out, and then that are ready to be inputted, and then I'll go input them into the system. The afternoon is typically then when the um, tables and the scoring is done. Did I get your question, Christy, or did I walk around it?
Yes, we've just always had what we've just always had our judges that are judging each room like put their information.
Put it
So
directly in there.
yes, so we
Yeah,
have
that's
three.
fine too.
Okay, so we have three
Mhm.
judges. I usually tell them all to judge, but like look for, core values, like they're
Yep.
particularly looking. And then they kind of all congregate and figure out what they want to give that team, and then they put it in. So I don't have
Okay.
to do it when we get in the room.
Yep, that's fine too. That's fine too. It's
Okay.
that's a choice if you're using, particularly helpful if you're using FL tournament. Um, that's easier to do.
Okay.
Um,
I want to make sure, like, oh, I've been not following directions.
no, that's fine. There's
Okay.
nothing wrong with that. I usually haven't because usually I'm not. In Ohio anyway, we don't use FL tournament anymore. We did that in COVID, and then we kind of stopped doing that, and we used the first Excel file.
Okay.
Um, instead. But I understand. I know in Kentucky we do still use FL tournament, and if you're comfortable with that, go for it. Good questions. Any others? All right, judge training resources. So, first one I thought was interesting is what is the characteristics of a great judge? I got this from Brenda. And this is as the global team reached out and looked at feedback at the World Festival across all the regions, states, countries, whatever throughout. And there was a lot of consistent themes, and I put them here. So a great judge is one who's kind, energetic, not sitting there yawning, not kind of fiddling on their phone kind of thing. They're offering improvements, but in a non-confrontational way. Um, some examples of that might be rather than saying you should use more sensors, it might be consider how you might incorporate a sensor next time or something like that, which is a little bit. It's a feedback. It's a improvement feedback, but in a non abrupt way. Sometimes the abruptness can be misunderstood as it goes through from judge to what's written down to what the coaches see to what the coaches communicate. Smiley, compassionate, encouraging, make connections. That's like the eye contact and the listening and the not, that kind of stuff. Positive. And basically, and this last one was kind of an interesting one, which is makes the teams feel recognized for what they did. Um, and so even if a team, they struggle, we've all seen them where they struggled and whatnot. But if they come out of that room feeling that they did the best that they could do, that's that's what they want to. That's what great judges do for a team. Those teams that come out of a room feeling, man, we didn't do very good. The judges can help set the tone there a little bit. So that's kind of, I thought this was an interesting list from surveys of teams around the world. Resources for teams. So let me see if I can, okay. Um, there are team resources. So if you get this, I'll make this deck available. But in here, there's all kinds of resources that are available for teams um, in here. All right. And some of the key ones are the rubrics are in there, session flow charts, awards list, and preparing your event video. These are all available for the teams. So where do I have it? Yeah, it's all in here. I'm just losing it right now, but it's, yeah, here's the flow chart. I think the rubrics score sheet, here's the rubrics. So they're all in here. The teams can all access them. And in a like a global judge advisor meeting that they had back in July, they actually recommended that whether it be a tournament director or the head judge advisor, a couple weeks prior to an event, can go ahead and send a link or send these specific items to all the teams. So that way, for those teams that may or may not have it, or may have gotten it but forgot about it, or anything like that, they can go ahead and have this and kind of do that even playing field, if you will, for all teams for these resources. There are additional resources for judges that when you do the first judge training, there's training videos, session script and questions, a judge guide and quiz. This is new for this year. I haven't seen it yet. Um, I need to go ahead and get myself signed up as a judge and a judge advisor so I can go ahead and actually take these um, things and see them for myself. And then there's a season overview. And this is kind of a new thing, which if you're a judge, but you're not actually involved in a team throughout the year, which many people are, they'd come in, they do their judging every year, and that's awesome. But they don't necessarily know what the game is. And so this is what the season overview will do is go ahead and give you some of the key words that might be going around when the students come in and say, "Oh yeah, we got to go do the thingamajogger," and the whatchamajig, and that was the hardest thing for us to do. It kind of explains a little bit about what those terms mean and why they're important for the this year's of event game. And then for judge advisors, there's also judge advisor training, which includes a script. This is going to be a new thing, the judge training slide deck. I'll cover a little bit later. This was actually one, I used to do one for all of my training judges that day of training. Um, just to get everybody all on the same page. I'll share it here in a little bit. The one that I did for Kentucky last year. Jackie has already seen a little bit of that when we talked back in July. The global team became aware of it, and they're actually making one that's supposed to be. I haven't seen it yet, but supposed to be kind of be inspired by the one that I used to do. So I'm going to try and probably start with that one, but a day of training that takes about 45 to 60 minutes and covers a lot of key basics. And encourage all judge advisors to get their judges there early. If you haven't done this in the past, just get them there early, and while they're grabbing a little breakfast, just kind of get a few things and get things. Even the experienced judges, I do this with my folks who've been doing it for a decade or more. They come every year and they're like, "Yep, it's good to get calibrated on what the expectations are." And then, of course, the official judging spreadsheet, or if you're using FL Tournament, that's fine. And again, please ask any questions or stop me at any time. All right. Is there anybody who doesn't use FL Tournament or is interested in maybe using something else? You can do a hand show or talk or something.
If there was an option, Gene, that would be lovely because it is wonky and it is very slow.
Are you talking
So,
about FLL tournament is walking and slow?
Yeah, yes.
Especially when you're changing screens
mhm.
from one area to another area. Yeah.
The other thing that I hear a lot of feedback on from judges is there is no core value, and at least last year. I don't know if FL Tournament has changed it now, but there's no core value rubric, but they look for core value feedback. But the typical feedback forms where you put feedback on, like the handwritten ones, the rubrics, they don't have, they ask you to add a little bit relative to core values. But so that's one where I've heard judges, they do it later. If they do it in the room, that's awesome. But if they do it later, they go, oh, I don't know. And that kind of throws people a little bit. But from my perspective, I love the OJS. And if you haven't seen it, it looks like this. It's available on the site. You kind of put in your team numbers, whatever lane number, how many teams are advancing, and then you got, what awards you're doing. And there's a central page that shows everything. But so you would go in, and for each team, you'd put in for all the rubrics, put in their numbers. And this is just an Excel spreadsheet. So it still could be done if they have Excel on a computer in the room. You put in the robot design inputs. And these are just samples that I put in, just I was testing it out. And the core values, it automatically comes over based upon the ones that are duplicated. And then when you go to the overall resort, there's also the robot game scores. This becomes the hard part with this one, is how do you coordinate getting the game scores? There's a couple different ways that can be done. What I've typically done is I have access to the rotating screens, so I get myself on there and I will go ahead and throw stuff in here. Or I can pull it from an event hub, but this is the hardest part, getting that in there. But once all that's in there, you can go ahead and do, all right, what's the champions rank? Here's the teams that we want to talk about. What if you do like sort from smallest to largest on the robot design, here's what they look like, and you can highlight, if you give a team an award, then it shows up as yellow, and so you can't give them another award and things like that. So it's got a lot of those characteristics. That's an FL tournament. You would have to share this with all your judges if you want them to do it in the room. But you can tinker around and play with it, and be happy to answer any questions if you want to go through it. Like I said, I've used this numerous times. I actually helped write a lot of the well, there's no macros anymore, but the formulations behind everything that moves things from screen to screen and all that kind of stuff. I was helping out the global team with that.
So, John, where does the feedback go then?
So the feedback is in the rubric itself. So what will happen, typically I don't have a rubric pulled up, but you've all seen the rubric, and at the bottom of the rubric is the feedback. And what I'll typically do is give judges two copies, a black and white one and then a color one, and then make the black and white one their like kind of scribble on while they're going through things, and then make the color one the formal copy that gets sent or given to the teams at the end of the competition. So they don't get a digital copy, they get the handwritten copy at the end of the day.
Okay.
So that's different. That's different. Now, what it does prevent, I heard in at the premier event in Massachusetts, I think it was WPI maybe, where they went ahead and tried to do FL tournament and try to send the whatever, but instead they sent basically everybody's scores for the entire tournament to all coaches.
That's possible?
They found a way. Yeah,
I think I know what happened because they probably included all the links for all the teams
yeah.
and sent it to
Or
all the
something
coaches.
had, yeah. Brenda was telling me about that,
Fine.
and she's like, "Ooh!" But at least if you just give this piece of paper, it's right there, and it's the day of. So it's
Yeah,
it's a, rather than typing that in, you have to write it. So there's pros and cons either way.
there are.
But yeah, Christy, if you're interested in playing with this spreadsheet is on here. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is, official judging spreadsheet. and then you can pull that and play with it if you'd like. And if you have any questions or anything like that, I've done a lot of work with it, so you can feel free to send stuff to me, or we can set up a separate conversation.
Mm. Yeah, there's
There you
pros and cons. Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes if you're just used to something, then there's nothing wrong with it. Go with it.
Well, and
But if you're
also,
looking for something a little different because of other issues, maybe give it a try.
well, and sometimes it depends on what technology is available at the venue as well. So if you
Yep.
don't have devices to like input the scores, then you kind of have to resort to paper. So
Right. Right. There's a third, which is the Event Hub. Um, this is kind of an all-encompassing digital tool that allows, just in a high level, yeah, the people in the doing the inputting of robot scores in the Event Hub will not be able to see what's happening in the judging room. So they're prevented from seeing the actual judging numbers. So that can't be accidentally viewed by somebody, or if somebody's parent or a coach from a team is helping out, they can't go and explore and figure out how the judges rated them early and seeing where they rank against everything. However, I think they've got all the bugs worked out. Haven't used it other than to pull some scores in myself, but I want to play with it a little bit more this year in some other things here in Ohio before recommending it as anything for Kentucky, if that's okay. So I'd like to just keep it to the 1 and 2. I want to learn more about the Event Hub before I can explain how to use it and recommend it. Sound good? Okay. Awards, trophies, and advancement. You saw both the FL tournament and this one have those in there. Work with your tournament director, and I don't know, Gene, how you are working with tournament directors to define exactly which awards a judging team is deciding, and the clarity on how many advancement spots a judging team is determining. But I've always worked with my tournament director to get those items answered. And Gene, you probably can explain a little more about how that gets decided
right.
between you and the tournament director.
Well, each tournament director, they decide how many tournaments that they're going to sign because it's the required trophies that first has every tournament award, but then they can also has as many local awards that they want to give. So, like for instance, the volunteer award, the champions award, and then robot performance, and then the core areas, project core values and robot design. Those are
Yep.
your required awards. The other ones, if you have a large event and you want to give out more trophies to fall between the quarter and one half of attending teams getting trophies, then you might have to go deeper into some of those. Like, for instance, if you need one more trophy, you give out champion second place. But yeah,
Yep.
so,
There's also the engineering one, the
right,
breakthrough award, the all-star award, those kinds of things too.
right. It comes down to the size of the event. Sometimes local events might want to honor like the sponsor award.
Mhm.
Like if there's a sponsor, then there might be award that's particular to that, or if somebody showed tremendous service that you want to recognize, that's fine. We tell them how many teams that they can advance to the championship. So
Okay.
we specify the exact number that we want them to advance to us.
And I know this is a me thing, but at state, I would love to see who got what awards at every tournament. Because for me, as I try to balance out the different judging lanes, I don't want to have all the tournament champions in one judging lane, for example. Be great to have them spread out a little bit, because I think that helps with the judging lanes and things like that. So getting a little bit of a mixture there tends to help out. But you also have to. There's other factors, but that's always one
Yeah.
that I tend to be you know, if I had my druthers, I'd love to see who got what awards. Let's see what else we got. Judge calibration. So one of the most common problems, and this is a problem in Kentucky, it's a problem in Guatemala, um, is that getting those judging lanes consistent. So the best ways that we've heard of across that is going on right now at the within the first community is kind of like 3 steps at this point. One is go through the first training, and that is, you know, you get your sign up on the first program, and you go, everybody goes to that training, so you get that kind of basic foundation. Then the second one is that 40 to 60 minutes of day of training. And I can pull up here what that looks like from what I did in Kentucky, and we'll kind of go through it real quickly, and we'll make sure that you have something that you can adapt for yourself. And this is the Kentucky State from last year. And then as a JA, the other thing is watch for scoring trends, particularly around 1s and 4s. So when I'm going through and talking to my judges in between their different groups, I'm not just asking if they're thirsty and would like a bottle of water. I'm also taking a look and seeing, are they getting a lot of 1s? Are they getting a lot of 4s? And why is that? And making sure that a room is not too harsh or too easy, so to speak. And trying to see, there should be a kind of a random balancing there. So you got to watch for that. But that's the 3 things there. Taking a look at like what, all right, let me see if you guys, can you guys see this? Am I showing the screen or am I just showing the, okay. Sometimes it only shows the program rather than the screen. I thought I picked the right one. So this is an example of what, and I'm going to run through this really fast. What that day of might look like is I always start with thank you. So thanking all the judges because they're taking a full day out of their weekend to go and help these kids. And everybody here who has done decade or more and many years of things, I sincerely thank you for all the work that you guys have done over for these kids over the last several years. That is one of the most important things that we can do for these kids who are interested in these STEM and robotics type activities. So appreciate it. And I always like the judging because nobody sees us, but boy, that is a backbone that makes the whole thing work. All right, schedule, put in your tournament schedule here. So yeah, you can all review it at the beginning. You'll get that primarily from your tournament director. Here is kind of a sample of how many lanes, what times, what team numbers may be in here. I've removed all that to protect the innocent. But you can see, you know, all right, you put a name here, who's the project judge, who's the robot judge in room A or lane A, and what room are they in, that kind of stuff. And what time, who will they see when. I also make notes for teams to kind of help them out. Like, for example, this is one from last year. There was SHMS Bearbots and SHMS Junior Bearbots. Very similarly named teams, just making sure that the judges, whoever had them, were aware of that and made sure that you know, they were cognizant and that was top of mind. Likewise, we learned from a particular team that there was a student on the autistic spectrum, didn't need any special accommodations, but he sometimes struggles with direct eye contact. So don't, you know, so letting that team or letting those judges know that on this team, this is why I also like to keep things kind of, which in the judging room stays in the judging room kind of thing. You don't necessarily want to be advertising that around, but sometimes it's good for that judging team to know this. So that way they don't look and go, wow, that kid was kind of rude, or they were kind of what, you know, something like that, that might have a negative impact on the core value when it's really not. They're doing their very, very best. So things like that, I'll put in some notes. The session flow, there's a few things that I highlight, including, you know, hey, we're getting them between sessions, numerics and feedback. This is always a good one. Hopefully it starts to get better because of the changes they made last year, though. That final 8 minutes, final share and feedback. Sometimes teams don't know what to do. Good teams do, but really good teams anyway do. but you can help fill that out, and how might the judge best be able to fill that space in there, and also make sure that you leave some time for feedback and encouragement for the competition for the day. This is probably the biggest thing, which is what is a 3 and a 4 and what are they not? Um, the way I do it, and every judge advisor can be a little different, but it's best to be clear is the most important thing for consistency. I say there's no half points. There's no such thing as a 3.5. There's a 3 and you might put a little star next to it. So if you're in deliberation that you might want to talk about them a little bit more than a team that might be a lower 3. You can make little notations to yourself, but a 3 is a 3, a 2 is a 2, a 4 is a 4. And that a 3 must meet all the criteria for accomplished. We know, and this is one of the hard parts, some of the rubrics are not, they're subject to interpretation, which is the intent. So there is some things that are like one or more sources for their like innovation project. It's like, well, okay, is 2 more, and then that's a 2, I think, and then a 3 says many sources. So what's a 1 or more and what's a many? And so some of that is subject to interpretation, and some of that is subject to, well, if this is the third team you've seen and you're at the state championships, you might see teams that have, that come in consistently 3 and 3 and 4 and that kind of stuff. So 2 would probably be two sources might be in the 2 range. But at a qualifier where everybody might be at a 1 because they're still kind of going through their season, a 1 or a 2, 2 might look like many. So, there will be a little bit of that goes on, and the judges have to make their best assessment. And that is one of those reasons why there is some, oftentimes it's viewed as score deflation from as you move up, because what you get at a qualifier, then a state, and then at Worlds might not, if you don't do anything different, it might not stay the same number because of that type of terminology. You can, if you'd like, as a judge advisor, give them a numeric in the room. I haven't, but I know judge advisors that do. That say, all right, for this tournament, more means 2, many means 3 or more. That kind of thing. You could choose to do that. A 4, so let's see, if you don't meet the criteria, score them as a 2, but make a note like I talked about. A 4 is truly above and beyond, and it requires the judge to document why. And so again, this was for state. So I do at state expect to see some 4s, but very unlikely to see a team that gets all 4s. Similar for qualifying tournaments or anything in between. That, there might be a 4 here or there. Probably unlikely. It's got to be a superstar type team that's going to have all 4s, and they're typically the ones that are vying for the tournament champion at Worlds. And I've actually judged teams that have been in the tournament championship conversation at Worlds. We talked about all project ideas are okay. This is one that we did at state that I'd like to do more of in the qualifying things. And that is the last item. I wish I had pulled the rubric up. But the last item in the innovation project rubric, it is impossible to really give a 4. It's like, 3 is like everything is all sunny roses, supercharged. So I don't know how, nobody knows how you can actually get a 4 truthfully. So, but if a team does outreach, and an outreach is something that looks like they showcased the robot, or they showcased first, or they did something like that. Like a lot of times I'll hear things like, hey, science day at school, and they asked some different people to come in, including the robotics team, to come and demonstrate and show what they do. That would be an outreach, just talking about first and doing that stuff. Or they're at they talk about how they went to a retirement home and showed the robot to some of the residents there, or they were part of the homecoming parade and they showed a bit about what they were. They were at the 4th of July at their community, whatever it happens to be, where they're talking about that kind of stuff. If a team talks about that, then what, and they do this at Worlds as well, is that we increase the score of the last item in the innovation project rubric by 1. So if they had a 3, it becomes a 4. If they had a 2, it becomes a 3. And that's how we give, because there is no more in the rubrics today, no more place to give a team credit for doing outreach. Hopefully, in the next iteration in a year or 2, they'll get that changed. All right. I talk about some suggested questions. Give the teams or the judges a PDF of some questions, and what I do is I try to ask everybody to ask 2 standard questions to kind of set a gauge. The project question: what other ideas did you consider? This is just mine. You can choose whatever, just as long as you've got a consistency. And then the robot: what changes did you make to improve your design throughout the season? So looking for that iteration type of thing. And then awards, and describing and telling everybody what are the different awards. This happened to be what we were giving out at state. So this, like I said, a variation of this, first is creating a standard template for teams to use, or judging judge advisors to use. And when I see that, I'll make sure that that gets out too, but I haven't seen it yet. In the meantime, I've got mine, like I said, that they've used as kind of like that basis. Any questions through there? Have you guys done stuff similar? And are there, if you've got things you've done similarly, or other things that you've trained people on, or things that you find important that I may not have included, please let me know. I'd be happy to always improve. Okay, hopefully everybody's awake. All right, so here is, I'll do this quick and dirty, the generalized flow of the Judge Advisor role, since many of you have done this. Am I willing to share this? Absolutely. Everything that I'm sharing here, I will work with Gene to get make sure that you all who are on here get copies of it. And if there's a particular place that we can put them that everybody has access to, great. Otherwise, we'll figure it out. I'll work with Gene separately on that. Cool. All right. So what is a generalized flow? I think I did this the first time. I think I showed Gene, and it was an eye chart. So I separated this into two different things. And so when I think of what is the JA's role from beginning to end, I start 2 weeks before, getting contact information from judges, the teams that are competing, how many lanes. I don't know why that went that way, but okay. How many lanes? Usually try to get 4 to 5 teams per lane, and I usually assign 2.5 judges for each lane, because sometimes judges get sick, sometimes they do a no-show. That guarantees me to have at least 2, and if I've got a third one in, they can float around or do something like that. It helps. And if you're looking at having a minimum of 3, you might want to do 3.5. You can make that assessment, but that's how I've approached it. Work with your tournament director on resources, what's the deliberation room, the judging room, what copies do you need, rubrics, building maps, schedules, etc., pens, post-it notes, all those kinds of things that help make everything kind of flow and run through. About a week ahead, I reach out to my judges with links for the first training, making sure that they've done it, some schedule building layout information, like, hey, sometimes an event might say this is where you're supposed to park. Or things like that. When you first come here, that kind of stuff. So sometimes that comes from the tournament director. I also put it out to my judge advisors, because then I know that they've gotten it. Maybe twice, but at least they've gotten it. Conduct the day of training on the day of to ensure calibration and understand any conflict of interest. So as you assign, try to get conflict of interest ahead of time. But if there is any, making sure that you address that appropriately. If he's, what do you want to call it? You don't judge a team that you're familiar with, like, or anything of that nature. And when deliberations come about, that person might be quiet a little bit on that that team's information. Okay, during judging, I check on my judges between sessions. We've talked about that. Do they need water? Did their pen die? Collect completed rubrics within the software, unless, as Christy pointed out, they do it all there and that's kind of their standard go-to, then that's fine too. I still like to take a look and see, are they getting a lot of ones, a lot of fours, and sometimes their little notes in their pen does die. So I do just try to check up on them, make sure I still love all my judges. All right, once judging is complete, feedback statements are written, loaded into the software, then the judge advisor leads the deliberation conversation. And remembering that the GAA facilitates, the judges actually do the decisions. I usually start with who's in the running for the Champions Award. Typically, it's a light discussion on the top 3 teams. Usually there's 2 or 3 teams that kind of cluster towards the top. And at this point in time, I usually ask the judges to spend no more than 1 to 2 minutes per team of these 3 teams to talk through why they're good or all around, and start to kind of judge that in, right? Because you don't have the table scores yet, so you don't know where they're coming in with that 4th component of the judging. So, but see where they're at and what's kind of looking, and you start to make some notes off there. Then proceed similarly to core values or project. It's a judge advisor's decision. I usually look at whichever one seems to have the best separation. Like there's a couple that are clustered. Used to be in the old days that the core values, everybody all had the same score, and that was painful. I also have a tendency, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I did this at state, which was I just basically say, hey, for the table gracious professionalism award, give everybody a 3, and just let's build that in so that way it's not popping around on me all the time. Just say everybody's a 3, and then when I talk to the when the head judge comes in, head ref comes in and talks to the team, then you might find that a team or 2 has got reasons to be a 2. And then you can take that into consideration. But this allows, yeah, everybody's trying to do their best, and so that's kind of how I've tried to approach it, to keep the scores from bouncing around. After they run a match, their core value might jump up and put them in a different spot, but still get that feedback that you need to make the right decisions. Let's see, again, 1 to 2 minutes on why that team's highly rated, have the judges have some QA after the team, and then the judges themselves as a group do in rank order. Probably telling you guys stuff that you already know, but this is, again, wasn't sure what the level of experience was coming in. Then you proceed to the other one, the project of the core value. So if you did core value, do project. If you did project, do core value, and finish off with robot performance, going through that same process. And then any other awards that you're doing, judges, breakthrough, rising star, local, rising all-star, local awards, whatever it happens to be, following that same sort of process, you get the routine. And then once 2 rounds of competition scores are complete and loaded in, then you bring that head ref in for a quick 2 to 4 minute discussion. Now you can start to see, all right, are your champions kind of still up there, or is there somebody new in there? And so you can nearly finalizing awards. You can't lock champions until final table scores, but you can get kind of close, and you can have your if this happens scenario kind of things that go on, and have the judges all in alignment on, all right, if nobody gets a higher score, then this is where we're going to go. If this team happens to, yeah, those kinds of things. A lot of scenario discussions that might occur at this stage. You choose the coaches award, and you start working on the scripts, and knowing that you might have to do a little bit of a flip there if you need to, but at least you're probably in good shape to get those scripts ready to go. And then once the table scores are done, you lock in everything, you finalize the scripts, and the judge advisor then works. And this is the judges writing the scripts, right? You get those scripts finalized, you work with the tournament director, you thank your judges, you collect all paper and notes to destroy separately, and then take a nap. You've earned it. That's the 16-point process that I kind of follow for being a judge advisor from 2 weeks prior to the nap at the end. So here's my email address if you'd like to ask me any questions that you come up with later, or if you want to have a one-to-one or anything else that we talked about here. Like I said, I'll work with Gene for anything that I had. This presentation, the PowerPoint here, because this has been out, I hate to use the word sanitized, but sanitized for, to keep, people and specific teams out, so you don't know who judged and which teams were in what lanes and whatever, but you get the idea. And I'll find out what First has for their standard one and see whether there's any additional modifications we'd like to make. And then the connections to the rubrics, the links to the rubrics, the links to the OJS if you want to use that spreadsheet format.
John, I
And
have a
I'm 1
question.
minute over.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Sorry. So, you mentioned that early in your presentation, we're talking about the theme, and you mentioned like an extension of last year's isn't necessarily acceptable. Is that a given rule? I'm asking because I know one team in particular who actually has a product from last year that they're getting into development. They're patenting it, and it totally leads into this year.
Yeah,
It was underwater, but they're doing something with underwater archaeology. Is that acceptable, or should I
I
guide them
think it would be
differently?
acceptable, but what they have to do is be very clear what was done before
Sure.
August 4th, when this, or whatever, August 5th, whenever this
Okay.
was done, and what they really have done this year.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's what they should be judged on, is what have they done this year? And I don't want to see us give teams, wow, look at all the work that they did when,
Right.
they're really doing 24 months worth of work rather than 12, if you will.
Gotcha. That's what I thought too. I just wanted to verify.
Yeah,
Also,
but I mean, if they've got a great idea and they're extending it and that kind of stuff, and they just happen to pick a great one last year, I don't want to penalize a team.
okay, thanks. Also, you mentioned that to have two coaches in the room, is that a requirement or is
Nope,
it up to the
it's
term?
well up to two coaches. A team
Okay.
can have nobody in the room, no coaches in the room.
Okay. I would like to have at least one, just.
Yeah, that's a choice at the tournament director if you want to have one. There's a team that I here in Ohio that I work with a lot, who's I judged a lot. They've been to Worlds 9 out of the last 10 years. And their coaches are like, I'm not going in there. No way. So they've
Right.
never been in the judging room.
Gotcha. Okay, and then last question. You talked about the final 8 minutes and that the good
Yeah.
teams would know what to do.
Mhm.
I find myself as a former coach a little confused with that 8 minutes. Like
Uh-huh.
I always had my kids prepared with, what to do at the end. Like if the judges say, is there anything else you want to share? Well, of course, we always had things. So
Correct.
how should that work with the judges? Do they say that? Do they say, is there anything else you want to share? Is it time for
Um,
the judges to just ask questions on the rubrics? What is that supposed to
yeah,
look like that 8
that's
minutes?
great. That's a great one. I usually will recommend to judges that when they get to that 8 minute period, that they say, all right, this is your time to share anything that you think we should know that you haven't already discussed, or any additional details that we hadn't got a chance to talk about. But give that, yeah, leading with a question like that to introduce that 8 minutes is a good one.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
That was all
no,
my
I
questions.
agree with you completely on that one, Jackie, is because the good teams will be like, all right, I'm going to use this time to kind of like showcase why I should be the innovation project winner, or why I should be this or both, and which then leads to why I should be the champion.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And John, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for making sure I was here, Jackie.
You're welcome.
There's some emails back and forth earlier. I was staining my deck and I get an email saying this was happening today, and I'm like, oh, I thought anyway. But I'm here and I don't have stain all over me. Any other questions? At least most people are awake. That's good. So one of the things I would like to do this year is because I coach an FTC team. So once we get their schedule all figured out and see what the schedules are here, I'd love to come and visit one or two tournaments if I can, just to kind of come and see how they run. All right. I've seen state, of course, but I'd love to see some of the other qualifying tournaments and just kind of get around. enjoy seeing the tournament, seeing how these kids do and get a view of that. So I may reach out to a couple of you. That's right, right? You get like, hey, I think we did a good job, and then you get to state and it's like, what happened? Why did scores go and those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
trying to help. And you know, I talked a lot with Jackie over the summer too, to try and look at this and go, how do we demystify, right? It shouldn't be a mystery of how this happens at state. It should, but you know, how do we work together to kind of help build this? And I don't have the background, right? Maybe you guys have been working together all along. I don't know, but at least you know, hey, I try to be open, at least with the judges, and I've worked a little bit with Gene here too. I'd love to do a kind of talk a little bit about what happens in the judging room to the coaches. So that way they see, how do you read the rubrics? What are some of the things that judges are looking at the rubrics and things like that too, if there's questions from coaches and teams. But I've got yours on there. I think Jackie, you had given me before the hazard ones. So I got there on there. So I got to see what happens with my FTC team if they're competing or not. I
We
think.
had to change our hazard dates. I'm not sure if you
Oh,
have
did you? Oh,
those.
what you got?
January 9th and January 10th.
Ah, same time as Bowling Green.
Oh, that weekend is very popular.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think the weekend after I'm hosting, or I'm a judge advisor for the Loveland or one of the Ohio districts. Ohio has like 500 FL teams, something like that, 400 or 500. And so they actually have qualifiers, then districts, and then state.
John, the one in Louisville, I think is going to be on December the 13th.
Okay, cool.
Is what we're targeting. That could still be up in the air, but that's the one. That's the last message.
Okay,
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, that's popular too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, I think there's an FTC tournament that weekend, but I don't know if our team is going to get that one or not.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys share like resources with the challenge kits. It's like the challenge kits, it's okay to use them at one tournament and then use them at another tournament. So not everyone has to purchase their own set of challenge kits unless you want to do that. Obviously, you know, you have to find someone who's not doing it your same date, but that's perfectly acceptable. Oh, one thing that I did want to mention is that this year on the Intent to Compete forum, we will be asking the teams if there's special needs and making it clear that we're asking besides wheelchairs, we so that everybody can feel like they're included. So even if there's a lot of neurodivergent, we get a lot of questions
Mhm.
like, do I include this on the form about this child that I suspect that is way on the autism spectrum? And it's like, well, by all means, we're letting them include that, and that will be given to all the tournament directors. And so be expecting that might make its way into the judge advisor room. I mean, this is personal, confidential information, but we think that it is a valuable piece of information for judges to have when they're considering teams because, well, a lot of people nowadays, especially teachers that have seen this behavior, they say you're in this environment, you can almost expect to see that during your course of judging that you might see some kids that won't make eye contact, that look like they're not engaging, but really they are. They're just doing it in their way. So, and we don't know if every tournament can have a quiet space. That was a really big thing that first tried to communicate to the partners that some kids need that quiet space, especially in the hubbub of the tournament. So that, that information will come along as well. But I just want to let the judge advisors know that there might be additional information beyond your tournament roster of individual, well, not students. The students will not be identified. It will just be someone on this team. So might have a special need. Okay.
All right, great. So Gene, I'll work with you on getting all this stuff out to these folks. Thank you so much for paying attention and listening and asking questions and being engaged. I appreciate it greatly. Look forward to an awesome season.
Thank you so much. I just want to reiterate John's thank you, and we'll get this out.
And once again, thank you for volunteering. I greatly appreciate it.